chapter, I think that's 20, chapter 20. This is after, pretty soon after Kitty meets Mr. Pennyfeather, and she's learning what it is the resistance does. And we're told on page 229 about some of their capabilities or some of their abilities, okay? Some can see demons. Stanley can see magical objects, we're told. Page 230. Timothy can hear magic or magical things, okay? And bottom of 230, we're told by Mr. Pennyfeather about magicians. He says, I've studied our verminous leaders for 30 years, and I believe I've learned their biggest weakness. They are greedy for everything, money, power, status, you name it, and quarrel incessantly about them all. But nothing arouses their passions more than magical trinkets. Okay? So, next page, Kitty asks, so what are you doing with all these magical trinkets that we steal? Or that you steal? What's the purpose of them? Okay? Apart from throwing them at me, because, when he first meets her, when he sets up a follow-up appointment, she has, a couple of the boys surprise her with these Mauler things, and she repels them because she has resilience. Okay? So, Kitty says, top of 232, we can use them. Mr. Pennyfeather says, could. Opinions divided. Okay, now go back for just a moment where he said, 230, talking about magicians, they're greedy for everything, money, power, status, and they quarrel incessantly about them. Okay? Opinions a little divided. Some, he says, for example, Eva here, believes it is morally dangerous to follow too closely in the magician's footsteps. She believes the item should be destroyed. I, however, it is my company, and so my word goes, believe we must use whatever weapons we can against our enemies. That includes turning their own magic against them. What does his little speech right there, top of 232, demonstrate? About his little group.
He's in charge.
He's in charge. What else?
He's just as power hungry.
They're just like the magicians. Notice, they quarrel among themselves. Difference of opinion. Magicians want power. They want the magical trinkets. What does Eva want to do with all those? Destroy them. She says, if we use them, we're no better than them. Back 232. It seems to me, Kitty, that by using such things, we become no better than the magicians themselves. It's far better to remain detached from the temptations of evil things. Okay? How else are we going to undermine our rulers? And then he says, we don't study magic like the magicians. We are in no moral danger. Okay? Why does Stroud have Pennyfeather say that? What's it really mean if somebody says, take the we out, make it first person. I am in no moral danger. What is that person setting him or herself up as? Beyond temptation. By setting oneself up as beyond temptation, in terms of literature throughout humanity, from the earliest days of literature to today, or let's say till this, 2008, 2010, whenever this was published, what you are always doing, whenever you make a statement like that, is you are setting yourself up for the biggest fall. Why? Well, the writer of Proverbs says, pride goeth before a fall. When you say, I am beyond moral temptation, You're saying, nothing can affect me. Well, there's nobody that can say that. We are no moral danger, but by doing a little bit of research, reading in some stolen books, we can learn to operate basic weapons. Now, if you were in my next class, the Tolkien Rolling course, the title of that course is The Renunciation of Power in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter novels. Okay? Why? Because in Lord of the Rings, for example, one of the things the Fellowship, the members of the Fellowship, learn about Sauron's ring is it is inherently evil. There is nothing good about it. It can never be used for good. One of the big questions raised in the novel is, can we use the ring to destroy Sauron? Can we use his own weapon against him? Hoist with his own petard, as Shakespeare would put it. Well, the quote-unquote wise in the novel say, no, you can't. Why? It's inherently evil. It doesn't have a real analog in our world. When Tolkien wrote this and it was first published, a lot of people wanted to say, oh, I know what he's talking about. I know what the ring is. The ring is an atom bomb. That's what it's meant to represent. Therefore, atom bombs are inherently evil. They cannot be used, quote unquote, positively. And then you can extrapolate from that. And people have. It's not just atom bombs. It's all weapons. Any WMD, or essentially breaks down to, or can be broken down to, a gun. A gun is inherently evil. Okay? According to some folks. So, he says, we've got to learn what? Some of their knowledge, some of their ways. Why? To use it against them. And yet, we're above moral danger. Well, if you've got to the end of the novel, is that true? Clearly not. Okay? Because what are they going to go after pretty soon? Whose tomb are they going to try to raid? Gladstone's. Okay? Why? It's got a bunch of stuff in it, right? They think that stuff will be useful. It'll be powerful. They're told by their informant, he'd like a couple of things out of there. Not really important, not very major, little magical value, but he'd like them for his collection. Gladstone's cloak and his staff. Well, it turns out what in there is really important. The staff. The staff is very important here, and then when we get to the next book, the staff is super important there. Okay? So, he says, the more complex artifacts, the more powerful stuff, we're just keeping that safe out of the magician's hands. Okay? So, two things get Kitty involved with the company to begin with. One, pay her fine, 600 pounds. Two, she wanted to learn more about this resilience that she has. She wanted to learn more why she wasn't affected by magic and such. Okay? So, Kitty gradually takes on more and more authority within the group. She rises, in the status, so to speak, of the group. Okay? At the end of the chapter, we hear, the group's starting to focus on this guy, John Mandrake, this young magician who's becoming powerful and such. Okay? We're going to skip a bit. Let's see here. So, next chapter is when Pennyfeather says, we're going to go after Gladstone's tomb. Right? And Kitty wants to know, how come nobody's gone after it before? He says it's protected, etc. Okay. Hopkins tells him, he's got a, what? He's got a guy on the inside who knows some stuff, okay? Who's been feeding him information. Kitty, what's his name? What's his name? He said, I can't tell you his name. Nick, 246. How can we trust him? He could be about to betray us. And that's what Hopkins says. He's the one who's given us all the information that we've used to raid the things we've done in the past. If he wanted to get you arrested, if he wanted to turn you in, he would have already done it. Okay? Pennyfeather, bottom of 246. And it is my organization, after all. So what you just said. I'm the boss. I'm the ruler. Oh, let's use the language of government. I'm the prime minister. Only thing is, they didn't elect him. Prime minister, kind of. Kind of. It's supposed to be. We know in the magical world that's not how it works. Okay? So, we're told at the end of that chapter, Kitty thinks to herself, this is your last chance to achieve something concrete before you die. I just hope your judgment holds up. That's all. And we could skip from here and go directly to the raid, and what do we discover? Not a very good judge of character. Pennyfeather. Okay? His judgment didn't hold up. Okay? Part 3. So, Nathaniel's getting ready to go where? Prague. Okay? Jane Farrar, slinks up next to him because we get this cat-like language. She's essentially trying to seduce him. I've got this big, long, soft couch at home, And it's kind of working, because bear in mind, he's barely 15. She's 17 or 18. Okay. Hormones, going crazy. He has his chance, but no. He's got to go off to Prague. So he and Bartimaeus go off to Prague, and I'm going to skip a bunch. Let's see. Skip a whole bunch. And they meet their source, a guy named Harlequin. And we're going to skip a bunch more again. We go on to the day of the raid, or just before the day of the raid, and Kitty is sent to meet. I'm trying to think of what to call this guy. The source of their information, not Clem Hopkins, the one who provides him information. At the theater, 288, 289. And what are we told? This guy meets her and threatens her. Okay. She says, okay, but just beware. I've got, a threat too if I'm not out of here in 15 minutes. Yes. Pardon?
Who threatened Kitty
again? The source. We don't know his name yet. Okay. He says, let me see here. Page 287. She feels a sharp point in her back. He says it's a stiletto. Okay. About an inch down from the tip is poison. If that hits your skin, if I stab you, that hits your skin, you're dead in 13 seconds. She's like, cool. We've got precautions too. I've got some people outside. We got a bunch of detonators. And if I'm not out in 15 minutes, the whole place comes down. He goes, I like this. I like you. You've got class, Okay? So that's when he tells her, yes, there are some precautions around the tomb. And I want the cloak and the staff, and they don't mean anything. Okay? So, they go off to the place where the tomb is. What is that place? Westminster Abbey. You go to Westminster Abbey today, and you go in the main entrance, and they have it horrible now because it's all roped off. You have to follow the ropes around and do the tour the way they want you to do it. Unless you go like on a Sunday and there are services. Then you go in, you stay there for the service, then you can walk around until they start roping everything off for the middle hours of the day, etc. Okay? And there is a place in Westminster Abbey called Poets' Corner. that people have been buried in since about 1500. All the famous literary people, almost all, the famous literary people in Britain are buried in Poets' Corner. Okay? There are also, not in Poets' Corner, but in the Abbey itself, there are also a lot of famous kings, queens, prime ministers. Okay? That's why Gladstone's there. So they get ready for their big raid. They go off, and Stroud leaves us hanging. We go on to chapter 27. Okay? So, what do we discover in Prague? Well, it's been a setup, essentially. So Nathaniel and Bartimaeus, they're there. They're in the Prague square. They're waiting for their spy, Harlequin, to show up. They've met him once. He's supposed to meet him again. He doesn't show up. Okay? But they do have one idea of where to go to. They're supposed to meet this guy, according to a piece of paper, on Golden Street. Okay? Page 29. They go and meet this guy. Excuse me. They're supposed to meet Harlequin there. And they meet who? Chapter 29. Simon Lovelace's mercenary. Big guy, beard. Okay? And he's got these big boots on. What are called the 7-league boots. Takes a step. Okay? And he can walk very long distances very quickly. Very long distances means like cover 7 miles in a couple of minutes, kind of a thing, because they're magical, okay? So they're there to meet Kafka, who's an old magician, an old Jewish magician. He tells them that he has helped do what? Or he has done what? Sorry, not helped do what? He's written a manuscript, okay, for Golem. What else is needed?
Blood.
Okay.
Well, Golem's eye.
For the Golem's eye. You need the eye in order to animate. So you got to put the manuscript in its mouth and the eye in it, the hole in its head. And with these two things, the Golem will come alive. Because what's a Golem made out of?
Clay.
Just clay. Mud. Okay? And they find out Simon Lovelace, had stolen from Prague previously the Golem's eye that was there. Okay? So Bartimaeus and Nathaniel make a comment about this guy, this mercenary, being, Lovelace's stooge. And he tells them, no. Lovelace was never my master. Page 334. He was not my main employer. Even then, he was nothing but a sideshow, an amateur, much too eager for success. Much too eager for success means what? What was his real master willing to do? And I don't mean willing to do like kill people. Did he want immediate success? No, because we don't find out who his real master is. I'm trying to remember. Midway, 3/4 of the way through the next book. No, he's willing to play the long game. He'll have some ups and downs. It's going to take a while. What did Lovelace want? Power now. Okay? Skip a bit. So, we're left with Bartimaeus and Nathaniel in the room with the guy, and we go back to Gladstone's tomb. Okay? They get into the tomb. They get to the sarcophagus. They get the lid off. And what do we discover? Page 353. And we're not going to get through all this today, I don't think. I emailed to you and I put on the announcements page a lecture that'll cover the rest of the novel for what we don't finish. They look in the tomb and what do they see? Well, there's a shroud covering the body, but what else? In the coffin, there's all kinds of magical things. And we're told, bottom of 353, and look at the glow. It's incredible. Why? The brighter the glow, the more powerful the object. Stanley, it's all worth taking. Well, remember they were told two things weren't. The cloak and the staff. And Stanley, not the brightest bulb in the bunch, recognizes, no, even those two things are. Something here must be really strong. It's all got power, even the cloak. But they've agreed, for the information they needed to get in there, they're going to give away the cloak and the staff. Okay? So, Pennyfeather pulls himself together because he's, twittering with excitement. And top of 355. While everybody else, imagine this is the tomb. It's not just a regular, 6 foot long but maybe 2 foot wide coffin. This thing is a big, like, chest. Okay? Probably 3 or 4 feet deep, 7 or 8 feet long, 3 or 4 feet wide. So you gotta really climb almost into it in order to reach down to the bottom and pull stuff out. So they're all hovering around this thing. Meanwhile, where's Kitty? Well, we're told on 355, she's kind of standing off to the side. Her arms, we're told, loosely at her sides. Something doesn't feel right for her. The unease that had engulfed her upon the discovery of the bodies. What bodies?
Behind the hidden wall.
There's a hidden, whatever you call it. There's a wall and there's a bunch of bodies back there. That is, people have tried to do this before. Okay? Well, she asked earlier, if the tomb's got all this stuff in it, how come nobody's tried before? Okay? This anxiety was accompanied by a growing regret at the night's activities. Never had her ideals. And notice, pause, we get an explanation of what her ideals are. Her desire to see the magicians vanquished and power returned to the commoners. Okay? What does it mean, magicians vanquished? What do you do when you vanquish somebody? Okay, does it mean exterminate? It means defeat. It doesn't mean annihilate. And he doesn't say her desire to see the magicians annihilated, erased, magician aside. She just wants them defeated. And commoners to be restored to power. So those are her ideals. Never had her ideals seemed so divorced from the reality of Mr. Pennyfeather's group. At this moment, she's thinking, wait, here's what I want. That is not what this group wants. And what a grotesque reality it was. The naked greed of her companions. Well, what did Pennyfeather talk about back on page 230? He said, 232. Sorry, 230. They are greedy for everything, but nothing arouses their passions more than magical trinkets. Pot, meet, kettle, It's like looking in a mirror. Mr. Pennyfeather's red, glistening face, the soft clinking of the valuables as they disappeared into the outstretched bags, all of it seemed suddenly repugnant to her. The resistance was little more than a band of thieves and grave robbers. And she was one of them. Okay? Thieves and grave robbers. In any culture, in any place, in any time, is being a thief a good thing? No, it's not. Not at least to the, let's say, general population. I mean, maybe if you're in a thieves group, being a thief would be a good thing. If you're in a grave robbing group, being a grave robber would be a good thing, but not for everybody else. In fact, if you were to go back and look at kind of English law, and go back to the earliest English law, Anglo-Saxon law going back to 700 AD or so, thievery, being a thief is actually one of the very worst crimes you could commit. It ranks up there with murder and rape. Okay? And it does so throughout the Middle Ages. So they call her. And what happens? You could say, you could use this phrase, and it would only be a slight exaggeration, all hell breaks loose. Because what's in the tomb? Louder?
A Norse? Or Norse?
Okay. And what is that? An Afrit? Okay. Why?
To protect the valuable goods that are inside the tomb.
Who put it there?
Gladstone.
Glad-
Right before he died, he put them into his bones.
Right before he died, he embodied this thing in him. Okay? So, when this skeleton pops out, and then it's going to run all over London, okay, there's William Gladstone. What does everybody think about William Gladstone? Everybody, magicians, not commoners. They hold him up what? He's a model. He's a great, he's like Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson, etc. He's a great statesman, etc. And yet, now he's what? He's a skeleton dancing around the rooftops. Yeah, animated by a spirit, okay. But what does it show? This is what quote-unquote ultimate power gets you. What? Dead. Everybody what? Dies. Everybody dies. You have to confront death. Okay? Go on a little bit. Because there are going to be people who think they can not confront death. So, Kitty starts asking some questions. She goes, Mr. Gladstone. He goes, really? Does he look alive? She goes, not really. He says no, page 360. And he points to a plaque on the side of the sarcophagus. Can't you read? Dumbly, Kitty shook her head. And it's not that she can't read, like the dog went to the tree. She can read that. She can't read Sumerian. What if this were John Mandrake? Yeah, he can read it clearly. Can't read Sumerian, and she goes ferreting in Gladstone's tomb, grave. So you didn't see the bit about leaving the glorious leader to rest in peace? No, we didn't. Sorry. We'll put the stuff back. Leave us alone now. Or the bits about perpetual guardian or savage vengeance or no apologies accepted? No, none of that. Sorry. So no, that's all written there. Okay. So, who gets out? Who leaves Gladstone's tomb alive? Kitty? What happens to Stanley? He's the one who falls into the tomb. And he comes popping out, and his head kind of does, the exorcist thing. And Stanley's not with us anymore. Pennyfeather? Fred? Nick? Anne? Part 4. So Nathaniel gets back from Prague, and he's thinking, he's in his limo, heading off to government. He's thinking about Kafka's children rotting away in some British prison. Because what did he promise? I'll get him out. Okay? And he's trying to think, who knew I went to Prague? Who set me up? And he thinks, who knew? Well, I knew. He didn't set himself up. Whitwell knew. Possible. Who else? Julius Tallow knew. Second Secretary of the Foreign Office, who's never named, okay, who briefed Nathaniel before the flight. Unless, hold on. That's right. Jane Farrar. Who does Jane Farrar work for? Henry Duval, Chief of Police. And he thinks, she used a charm on me. Okay? So he gets back, and he gets back just when? When they discover Gladstone's tomb has been destroyed or what? Raided. Okay? So let's go on a little bit. They're talking about what's missing, the staff, all this kind of stuff. Bottom of 383. Okay. Nathaniel tells him what he's discovered at Prague, and top of 383, the police chief says to the prime minister, because, I mean, this is a big deal, says, I think this is the moment, Rupert, for some harsh words to be said. This boy Mandrake was meant to be pursuing the resistance. Now Westminster Abbey, resting place of the great, has been broached. Gladstone's tomb defiled. Staff has been stolen. And the boy's been doing nothing. Devereux looks at Nathaniel. What do you got to say? Nothing. Why? Because he thinks, if I say anything, I'm screwed. Best to just keep my mouth shut. He says, I'm disappointed. Okay? Bottom of that page. The gaggle of ministers departed the abbey, Mrs. Whitwell and Tallow anxiously taking up the rear. Nathaniel made no move to follow them. Very well, he thought. I shall distance myself from you too. Who's the you? Is it the government? Could be. Who specifically? Whitwell and Tallow. Because what have they just done? They essentially hung him out to dry. Because what did neither of them do? Neither came to his defense.
He sent that, right? So.
I mean, Whitwell essentially said, John, if you do well, I look good. If I look good, you rise up. If I don't look good, my displeasure will fall on you. Well, Devereux's displeasure has fallen partly on her, but even more on him. Okay? Let's see. Go on to Nathaniel is talking with Bartimaeus in 388, 389. He says, I've read a lot about the staff. Powerful, words of command, fairly straightforward, etc., etc. And he's thinking, if I find it, I'll give it to Whitwell. Bartimaeus, typical. He'd do anything to keep Whitwell's favor. Okay? Skip a little bit. He tells Bartimaeus that Farrar knew he had been in Prague. So we see the skeleton dancing around the rooftops of London. Trying to think where to really pick up best. Skeleton tells, page 404, Skeleton tells Bartimaeus, the girl Kitty will still have it. She's in London. Sooner or later I will find her. Okay. Pick up with 35. 954. 30, yeah, chapter 35, pages 414, 415. So Bartimaeus knows Kitty has the staff. So he's going to tell Nathaniel. Bottom of 414. For more than 3 years, her energies and emotions had helped to build the resistance. So she's been with them that long. Now, her companions had gone. With them, the ideals they shared. Notice, the ideals they shared. But what were these ideals? The events in the Abbey had not only changed her future, they transformed her sense of the past. The futility of the whole affair now seemed transparent. The futility and the foolishness. When she tried to bring Mr. Pennyfeather to mind now, she saw not the principled leader she had followed for so long, but little more than a grinning thief, red-faced, sweating in the lantern light. So, what's she really doing here? This is kind of, to use a modern phrase, this is a come to Jesus moment. She's kind of, really examining, what have I been doing for the last 3 years? What do I really know about the people I've been hanging around with? What did they ever expected to achieve, she asks. What would the artifacts have truly accomplished? Magicians would not have been toppled, even with a crystal ball. No, they'd been kidding themselves. And she draws a silver pendant from her pocket and stares dully. Grandmama Earnick's gift had saved her. Nothing more, nothing less. It was the purest luck she had survived it all. And what does she start to go to? Thinking it was sheerly by luck that I survived. A single demon had attacked, and their resilience had come to nothing. All the group's brave words, all Mr. Hopkins's clever counsel, all Fred's boasting, all Nick's earnest rhetoric, worthless. Nick, the demon had said that it had killed 10 out of 12 intruders. So she thinks, those who were already there, dead, the bodies they found, that meant Nick had survived. Her mouth curled into a faint sneer. No thought from him of helping Fred or Anne or Mr. Pennyfeather. And then there was this Mr. Hopkins. Who was he? Where had he been all this time? Neither he nor the mystery benefactor. What? Had dared be present at the tomb? What conclusion is she coming to that she doesn't state?
They were set up.
We were set up. We were all set up. So there's the staff laying beside her. She knows it's powerful. Can she use it? No, she doesn't know the words. Okay. So what does she do? Okay, she throws it down. What else? She goes home. She goes home. Okay. And who's already there? 418, 419. Kitty stopped dead. In the chair opposite her father sat a young man. Hello, Kitty. And her father says, this is Mr. Mandrake from the Department of Internal Affairs. He wants to ask you some questions. 419. So this was the Mandrake whose servants had pursued the resistance for so many months. She would have known his profession a mile off. His clothes were the giveaway. Long black coat, ridiculously tight black suit, shiny patent leather shoes, outsized red handkerchief, hair long about the face, etc., etc. If you've ever seen the Diana Wynne Jones, the Miyazaki animated version, Howl's Moving Castle, he looks like Howl. Stringy hair around his face, tight clothes, etc. Okay? And he sits there like this, with his hands like this. Okay? Bear in mind, he's about her same age. He's putting on a show. Okay? And so they talk. And he says, you've been witnessed in the company of other resistance members, etc., etc. Okay? 421, he says, where were you? Your clothes say something about you. You're covered in white stains. Looks like grave mold. He says, I've been reading in the PRO about a trial, Kathleen Jones, etc., etc. You've got a criminal record. Okay. 422, 423. He says, oh, and there's one other thing. I met you in an alley once. She says, really? I don't remember you. You must have a forgettable face. Slap. He says, but I didn't forget yours. Okay? And then, because he's charged her with certain crimes, page 423, she says, no, wait, I do deny one thing. He says, I notice you've stopped denying the charges that he's been leveling. She goes, no, wait, I do deny one thing. You said I left you for dead in that alley. Not so. Fred would have cut your throat, but I spared you. The only reason you're alive today is because I showed you mercy. Heaven knows why, you miserable little sneak. I should have done the world a favor. Her father's like, she doesn't mean that, because he's thinking we're toast. We will disappear in the middle of the night. Okay? I despise you and all the other magicians. You care nothing for people like us. We're just here to provide your food and clean your houses, make your clothes. We slave away in your factories, workshops, while you and your demons live in luxury. If we cross your paths, we suffer like Jacob did. You're all callous and wicked and heartless and vain. And notice, you are callous, wicked, heartless, vain. Vain, that's the one that stuck. That's the one that hurt. She called him vain. Okay? So, he tries to attack her. And what happens? Nothing. Okay? Page 426. He says, after he does one thing, he rubs his hands, secure her, don't let her go. And Kitty says, and we might do a little bit more after this. Is that the best you can do? A mauler or a mooler? Please. She stretched out a hand before the startled creature could even reach her. So he calls forth this being. She reaches out and grabs it by the neck, swings it, and throws it into his face, where it bursts with a flatulent sound. An eruption of purple, bitter-smelling droplets peppered his suit and coat and the surrounding furnishings. He cries out in shock. He reaches for his handkerchief with one shot. He makes a sign. A red imp appears. Bolt of orange flame shoots at Kitty, catches her on the chest, knocks her back. Her mother screams. Her father cries. The imp capers forward. Kitty, however, is getting up, dusting off her clothes, and she draws her throwing disc from her jacket, flourishes it. The magician, who had lurched toward her in his fury, steps back, and she says, you can wear the tightest trousers you please, Mr. Mandrake, but the fact remains you're a conceited small-timer. If you follow me, I'll kill you. Now that's just not a boast. He's just attacked her twice. She repels both attacks. Goodbye. Oh, don't worry, Mom and Dad. I won't ruin your reputation. You'll never see me again. Why does she say that? 2 reasons, I think. One, she'll never see them again. What's another one? By saying that in front of John Mandrake, what's she doing for her parents?
Giving them an out or a way to
She's
protect themselves.
She's protecting them. She is showing him. She's kind of saying, these aren't my parents anymore. You can leave them alone. Okay? Let that hang for a bit. So, 428, 429. Now we get Mandrake or Nathaniel thinking. Okay? And we're told she called me a conceited small timer. Hard not to admire the girl's strength of character, but she would pay. He had not, middle of the next paragraph, 429. He had not done so, meaning he had not called for backup. He had wanted the success for himself alone. Retrieving the staff would have enhanced his status immeasurably. Prime Minister would have lauded him to the skies. I mean, the amulet and now the staff. Perhaps he would have been promoted, allowed to explore the powers of the staff. Duval and Whitwell would have been. So notice what he wanted. He wanted power. He thought if I could capture her and get the staff, I would get power. Okay? So Bartimaeus shows up, talks about having drowned the skeleton. He says, you don't look so good either. Okay? And we'll stop there because it's 10:05. Okay, so for the remainder of the book, I put a lecture up. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. You can scroll through and find about where this is or just watch the whole thing because we've got to get back on track. So, for